Welcome to Language Surfers Podcast, a space with fresh waves for the mind, dedicated to create a platform where professionals from both language industry and academia can share their professional experiences, and where we also explore different career paths at different stages. Hi, Denis.
Hi, Anka, how are you?
Very good, thank you. First of all, I just wanted to thank you for accepting to be a guest on the Language Surfers podcast. I'm really honored to have you here because I know that you have a very diverse professional experience, and I'm really looking forward to what you want to share with us. So before we start the conversation, would you be so kind and introduce yourself so that the audience know you as a guest for today?
Hello, Anka. Thank you very much for having me, and I really appreciate you thinking about me for this opportunity. What can I say about myself? Well, I'm a professional interpreter. I've been in the field specifically since 2007. And when I started the master's at the University of Alcalá, I currently work for the 20th Judicial Circuit of Florida, Administrative Office of the Courts, as an interpreter, full-time interpreter, staff interpreter. And I've done a lot more than just being an interpreter these days. I've previously done a lot. So we can start whenever you want for whatever part you want.
Definitely. Thank you so much. So, as you well know, I really like to know the journey quite from the beginning of every guest of the podcast. So, first of all, if that's okay with you, can you just tell us what was your motivation to study languages and to start your career in the language industry as a court interpreter, as a conference interpreter, trainer? So, why did you choose to study languages and not anything else?
Well, that's an easy one and a long one, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. I probably, as you know, my mother was a teacher. She was my primary school teacher, and I just learned from my mother. And mathematics was not just my strong point. So my mother's probably, yes, she was turned into an economist later on, but not me. I love languages and I love the way she expressed, although she was not as easy as teachers are these days. But then I learned my grandfather, he had some employees. He had some Haitians and he had some Jamaicans, and they spoke the language outside of the house and just around the house. And I was able to pick up, when I was a little kid, I was able to pick up some of their expressions and words, but just a few of them. Later on, I had the chance to be abroad, just out of my country, and I was in the southern part of Africa, and I was able to learn some Portuguese. I was able to learn some Kimbundo, a few expressions just to communicate with the locals. And Obimbundo, that's another dialect they speak or spoke at the time at the place. And so that's what really, really amazed me, just the way people can communicate and some other people were not able to understand. That really, really, really impressed me. And I was just really curious about that. So that's why I started studying languages.
Yeah, it's amazing. And just to clarify for the audience that you are originally from Cuba, right? So your mother tongue is Spanish, right?
Yes, I'm originally from Cuba, and I was born in the capital city, but I grew up in the middle of the countryside, like really nothing else except for a few houses, like 10 houses scattered around along a huge plain area. And we didn't have any roads around, we didn't have any electricity, we didn't have any running water. We just had a well, and we just had little kind of candles to light up ourselves at night. That was about it.
Yeah. Impressive, right? With how much technology has evolved nowadays, if you just think about that.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah. And regarding your professional career, so you are originally from Cuba, but then you started to get trained, right, as a public service translator and interpreter at the University of Alcalá in Madrid, in Spain. Was this country change a turning moment in your career from Cuba to Spain?
Yes, it was a huge change, as you can imagine. I just left Cuba in 2004. I gotta say, back in 1990, when I just came back to Cuba from Africa, I just did university. I went to university to become an English teacher. I wanted to be a doctor. Last minute decision, wanted to become a doctor, but I couldn't get it. Couldn't get into university to become a doctor. So I said, if it is not the most difficult thing to study, I will probably give it a try to the easiest thing for me. That was languages. And I just became, after 5 years of study, I became an English teacher. Then 10 years onwards, I just had the chance to go to Spain. And I wanted to go, I didn't want to go to the University of Alcalá, although finally it will end up by being my second alma mater. I just wanted to go to the Complutense, I think it was. They had a course for conference interpreters for Spanish, English, and Chinese. And that's what I wanted to, that's where I wanted to go to. And I was really, really, really very interested and really motivated to go. I took the Acceso para Mayores de 25, the course to enter the university. And I was not able, I mean, I passed. I had good marks, but not great enough just to get that one position that they offer for Mayores de 25. So I wasn't able to get it. So I just found a master's in Alcalá. And I decided, well, if it is not in the Complutense, anyways, that was about 50 kilometers drive in each way, each leg. So for me, that would have been very, very difficult. So finally, I said, all right, let's give it a try. Let's see what this is about. And I started taking the master's at the University of Alcalá. There was Masters of Arts in Intercultural Communication, Interpreting, and Translation in Public Services. Public services comprising at that time, at that moment, in that place, medical settings or healthcare settings, and legal, administrative as well. So, and that's, I became a master's there. I had the chance to meet you there. I met a whole bunch of great people there. I'm so grateful and honored to have met all of you guys there.
Yes,
And
the
that's
same.
where all my professional, thank you. That's where all my professional sort of interpreting life started, although I had been kind of teaching English and just doing many other things before.
Yeah, and how was the experience after you finished the master's degree?
Well, the master's as such was an amazing opportunity. I had the chance to meet Claudia Angelelli, I had the chance to meet Sandra Hale, I had the chance to meet Jan Cambridge, I had the chance to meet Ann Corsellis, I had the chance to meet Eric Hertog, I had the chance to meet, of course, Carmen Valero from the University of Alcalá, or Carmen Pena. I had the chance to meet Cynthia Gianbruno Day and interpret for her. She was my supervisor at the end of the master's. At the end of the master's, there was this conference that the Futispos group was organizing for conference for translators and interpreters in public services. And I had the chance to interpret that conference. I had the chance to meet Franz Pochacker and to meet Miriam Schlesinger. I interpreted Miriam Schlesinger's plenary session.
Wow.
That was my very first big just introduction to the world of conference interpreting. And that was an amazing one. That was incredible. After the master's, I had the chance to start a PhD, and I had the chance to become a teacher for the University of Alcalá for the same master's. Carmen Valero invited me to come on board with her, and that was amazing. That's when the best part of my professional career started. I'm just so proud and honored to have had that chance.
Yeah, that's amazing. And basically, you named all the big names in the industry, right? I also wanted to thank you this time because I know that you encouraged me to go to Cetra Summer School, and I also had a chance to meet most of these big names in the industry and scholars, right, who are always there to advance in the field of both translation and interpreting.
Sure. After I well, I finished my master's in 2008. Then 2009, I was inspired by Jan Cambridge, and Jan Cambridge said, if you really seriously want to become an interpreter, you should go to Critical Link
Yeah.
in 2010. But that was 27, 28. And I said, 2010 sounds like very far away from now. And I don't think I'm going to make it. And how am I going to make it? I just came to Spain in 2005. How am I going to make it to England? I don't think I will be able to. And then in 2009, I had the chance. Carmen just told me, why don't you go to the etc. the summer course for translation PhD students?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, it's mainly related to translation. What am I going to learn? And she said, anyways, you will meet people there that will not only inspire you, but they will guide you. And they
Yeah.
will give you what you probably need to continue in the researching field. And I did go. I had already met Eric Hertog, and Eric Hertog was the one who said, "Yeah, why don't you go to Critical Link next year?" That was 2009. That was the summer 2009. And Eric said, "Yeah, go to Critical Link. Talk to." Oh no, that was Eric was not there. I met Eric in Alcalá, and then he said, "Yeah, go to Critical Link. Go to Cetra in 2009, and you will meet Christina Schaffner. Talk
Oh,
to
yeah.
Christina Schaffner about it, and then you go and work with her, work with her at the University of um, Aston
Aston.
University in Birmingham, United Kingdom." And that was all like a dream. I said, like, how am I gonna make it? Like, I will never gonna make it. I'm just this little boy just coming from the middle of the countryside in a country where English was not a language. Like, we didn't even know the language existed except for this Jamaicans that I told you were working with my grandfather. So I didn't think I was going to be able to. But then, yes, I went to Cetra. I met Christina Schaffner. I asked her I wanted to go. She said, yes, you're welcome to come. And we started moving. We started rolling. We started just planning and came back from Cetra. I talked to Carmen Valero. She said, that's great news. Just let's send the application. Let's send all the paperwork that they're requesting. I come to 2010 comes, I come to England. I had meanwhile, I was researching with you, I was researching with Carmen, and I get this new computer, new laptop. I install a dictionary, then the computer blocked down, the laptop blocked down. And I'm in the middle in England, just Aston University, and part of the information, like most of the information from my computer got lost. And I was kind of freaking for just a couple of weeks there. That was a challenging moment. That was something like really, really bad for me. But anyways, I made it. I was able to work with Christina Schaffner. She kind of helped me, gave me the opportunity to organize most of the program for the Critical Link 5, I think it was, and in 2010. So I started with another Spanish and two British students. We started kind of plotting the program, the whole program for the Critical Link conference. And that was another amazing experience.
Yeah, I don't have any doubt about it. Definitely, Critical Link is a great reference for everyone in the translation and interpreting. And I really like how you explained the fact that at the beginning you thought that your journey from where you came and where you were in Spain, and it was everything just like a dream to go and work with all these great names in the industry and in the academia. But then you never doubted that if you want to do it, if you want to get to it, just take the first step, and then everything just starts to roll, right? And
Exactly. And go ahead.
yeah, so it's just having the courage, right? It's your dream. It's something that seems impossible until you really take the first step.
Exactly. I think it's part of it is just when you listen to your elders, when you listen to people with experience in the field, initially you just listen to your parents and your grandparents. If you're lucky to have them around. Your older brothers or sisters, if you have them. I was not the eldest of five, but I did listen a lot to my grandmother, and I did listen a lot to my mother and my grandfather. And they would always say, like, yes, you can do it. Like, yes, whatever you plan to do, you can do it. And when I met Eric Hertog in 2007 first, 2008 first, and then 2009 for 2 years in a row, we met at the University of Alcalá. And I remember him saying, yeah, you can go. Jan Cambridge gave it to me as a challenge. Yes, you should go. If you're serious about it, you should go there. I said, okay, man, it's 3 years onwards. I'm not going to make it. But then Eric came and he said as well, yes, you should go. So it was not a challenge anymore. It is like a commitment I have to make. And I was teaching as mainly as an English teacher, working as an English teacher around the Madrid area in company classes. Most of the time they pay better than small academies or even larger academies. And so, yes, I made it. I had a child in 2007. So it was a challenge for me and my wife at the time, because I was dedicating a lot of hours to studying and just researching and reading and reading and reading, like everybody who had just written anything, Daniel Gill, Robin Sutton, just reading and reading a lot. And all of a sudden, yes, I am in England at Aston University. It is February 2010. I thought it was going to be a lot colder, so I brought a lot of kind of gray clothes just for the cold weather in England. And it happened to be that England was Aston at that moment. Aston University was kind of warm, and Birmingham was warmer than Madrid at the moment. So I was really impressed with the weather as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's so nice. And I really like the word that you mentioned, commitment, because I think this is a key word in the professional experience of everyone. Because if you're interested in something, well, you've got an interest, you try to find ways of achieving it. But if you are really committed, I think that the level of engagement is much higher, and you really do whatever you need to do in order to achieve that commitment. And especially if you have other people inspiring and, encouraging you to achieve that commitment. I like that part a lot.
Exactly. And it's a commitment to you and to your folks, to your family and friends and colleagues. And it's a commitment with the field. I mean, you're just entering a field, because at that moment, we just started in 2007. I started this master's. So it just went from an idea, from a possibility just to study at a university that was close to my house. It's only 15 kilometers away from Atoque Cadenares, where I used to live. So it's not only a nearby university, it's now like a field you're just entering into, and you just had to get to the higher standards that they have set before, and you have to just get there quickly. I mean, you have to make an extra effort, and it takes a lot of commitment. It takes a lot of effort, because me, I was coming from English teaching, so methodology was my thing, grammar was my thing, kind of expression, whatever synonyms and vocabulary, and teaching was my thing, but it wasn't interpreting as such. It was not public service interpreting, it was not medical or legal interpreting. So it's a whole new field that you get there. It's all two new fields. And we were lucky enough to study translation as well as interpretation. And it does require different kind of skill set to translate mainly these two fields. So it was challenging. It was challenging. We had to study a lot. We had to prepare really, really hard. And I wasn't happy just with being an interpreter. I wanted to continue to be a trainer, a teacher. So I wanted to prepare double. I just started my PhD in 2008. My PhD initially was cognitive processes in the public service interpreters, mainly interpreters working in the medical field. Sometime later, I added cognitive, I also added emotional processes, because from the very beginning, that's what I wanted to see. I had just not put it that way from the beginning, but I just wanted to see how emotional processes would just affect cognitive processes, and that would affect the result, that would affect the how you perform as an interpreter, how you would just omit or how you would just edit the information you were given, the message, would you kind of just change the whole message or just provide the best message ever, most accurate message. So that was my research. And for that, I had to study hard. I did have to read a lot. I remember just putting my child to bed 10, maybe 10:30, and just going to bed 2, 3 a.m. every night. No
Yeah,
matter whether it was Monday or was Saturday, I was still studying at up to 2:30, 3 o'clock every night.
yeah, the proof of your commitment, right, to what you wanted to where you wanted to get,
Exactly.
and the daily effort to get there.
Exactly.
Coming back to the research you were doing, Denis, you mentioned that you wanted to you were covering the cognitive and also the emotional aspect regarding the interpreting profession, right? So could you just tell us how important is it for interpreters to make sure that they are able to manage the emotions? Because as we all know, interpreting, and especially conference interpreting, where most of the time you have to do a simultaneous interpreting, if someone makes a mistake, what would be your advice for new conference interpreters regarding the management of their emotions?
Yes, that is quite correct, Anka. It is that's part of the my research, and it came from the fact that I was trying to teach interpreters in the master's course we were teaching in Alcalá, and they were very linguistically capable. Most of the students who came from all sorts of backgrounds, but I found out by teaching them, or after teaching them for a while, that what I was able to probably provide them with was more that kind of navigation of emotions that you require, that you need when you're working as a public service interpreter. And that's quite before I entered the conference part or field. And what happens is that for public service interpreters, you are dealing with people when people are most vulnerable, when people are sick, and when people are about to lose their freedom or being punished for some errors they've made. So at those moments, people are very, very vulnerable, and vicariously, you tend to suffer those moments, those kind of stressful situations people are going through as well, because you can't help it. You are just there. You're interpreting for a doctor and a mother who has a baby with cancer, and you are not prepared for that. Not typically, not young people, not when you're 22, you're 25. You're not prepared for that unless you went through similar situation when you were a child or when you were younger through your family. And if a person comes with a cough or high blood pressure or even high glucose levels and blood glucose levels, that is okay. Anybody can interpret that. But if you just go into this appointment when the doctor is trying to explain that the baby might not make it to the mother just lost another child, and you see that baby right in front of you, you see that mother right in front of the doctor, begging the doctor for a solution, begging the doctor for this baby not to be the second one she's going to lose. Then, if you're not prepared, you're going to melt down. The mother, on the other hand, she's not going to melt down because she has a baby to fight for. But what is going to happen to you? This section is going to last 5 minutes. Doctor is going, or it's going to last 30 minutes. It doesn't matter. The doctor is going to explain the probable therapy, either if it is medication therapy or just chemotherapy or radiotherapy. The doctor is going to explain everything in detail. Once the mother has no longer questions, the doctor is going to say, that's fine. This is it. We're going to give it a try. And then he's going to turn his back around. He's going to go away to his office or to another patient's room. And then you're going to leave. You're going to go to your car. You're going to go to your office. You're going to go on the hospital aisles. And how are you going to feel? How are you going to handle that situation? Are you going to just forget about that and just focus on the next appointment you have as a staff or as a freelance interpreter? Are you just going to go and just send your report? I just did this. I'm going to make 300 euros or $300 for this session. Or are you going to be ruminating that conversation for 2 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours, 2 weeks, 2 months? How are you going to get out of that year after you have had, say, 24 sessions like this, only 2 months? Are you going to be okay? Do you feel prepared for that? And you have to feel frightened, or you have to feel is just eager to get prepared, just to get ready for that moment. We were not ready to interpret first. We only knew the languages. We were only bilingual, half or semi-bilingual. We learned the languages. So we can also learn how to just become able, very capable, just from the emotional intelligence point of view. You just need to prepare yourself. You don't get that preparation in just regular courses. You don't get it at school. You don't get it from primary school to just bachelor's or baccalaureate school. You don't get it to even through university. You don't get it. Not unless you know you will need it and you will just take a course in how to manage your emotions, how to serve your emotions, because you won't be able to say, no, I'm not going to feel that. No, you're going to feel it. All you will have to do is just learn what information you get, and when you're sad, for instance, when you're happy, for instance, and what you're going to be doing with that information. That is what we call surfing the emotions. That is what we call just managing, although you can control them. You are not able to control emotions. They just come naturally because you're a human being with emotions, just to be redundant on purpose, and you will feel it. So just learn. You have to take a course. You will have to learn on, because if you don't, when you just go to court and you see, like, for instance, just recently, and I'm just jumping back and forth here, but recently I just had to give somebody a 25-year sentence plus 10 years probation after the 25 compulsory. They cannot just finish before the time ends. So that was 35 years for a guy who was not 23 years old yet. And then the victim's daughter comes, and the victim's daughter starts reading just a trauma she and her family, her mother and her little sister, are going through. And then you feel devastated because not only you are next to the person who's just murdered in cold-blooded person, but you're also kind of reading what the trauma a whole family is going through. A community, we call it community here. In the United States, back in Europe or Spain, we call it public service interpreting. In Spain, we include medical and legal field. Here, community is mainly for the community. It's banking, it's schools, areas, and other areas, all right? So it is relevant for those interpreters, I was saying, either community or public service interpreting, whatever you want to call it. It is very important, as I said, medical and legal mainly. It is also in banking, also in housing, because if you're interpreting for people like housing authority in New York, you just learned that their buildings are very old in New York. They do not have heating system working for a whole week. Temperature is 32 Fahrenheit, which is about 0 degrees in Celsius. And those people are elderly and they're suffering a lot. And so you have to try and understand what their situation is, and you have to interpret for them. So, as I was saying, emotions are very, very relevant, and how to serve or manage your emotions for community or public service interpreters, medical or legal interpreters is very relevant. But also it's important for conference interpreters. Conference interpreters is a whole different thing. We used to call it the older sister, or the kind of a posh sister of community or conference or public service interpreting. because they are just in a booth. They have a speech that might be 1 hour, 2 hours long. They have it prepared. Maybe they have 120 slides. Maybe they have like 200 pages to go through. Maybe they have a whole set of slides from Excel, as we had. I was interpreting with cherries at some point. There's this huge conference in kind of economics and serious things. So you might have a lot of information to interpret, but they have it prepared. They have a partner in the booth. Maybe most of the time they do have a booth. We also have here in court, we interpret trials. We just interpret in couples or even more people if it is necessary, if the trial takes too long. And it is good because you just have support. When you're not interpreting, you're just supporting your team member. And you can research words, although you have prepared a 25 to 50 word glossary right before getting into the conference moment. And but also you can get, like, for some point, for some maybe emotional situations, you can get emotional and you might just lose track. You might just forget a word. You might just not be able to come up with a word with the right term that you have researched before, that you have prepared to say, and it won't come up to your mind. You just have this lapses. And when you have that lapses mentality, what do? Well, in the booth, you do have a partner, and your colleague or partner will just help you with that one. But what if you are on your own? What if you're interpreting and you don't know the word? Well, if it is consecutive, you might have the chance. You might probably have the chance, either if it is in court or if it is in big conferences, you might have the chance to just ask for permission from the audience or from just whatever authority there is, just to look for a word. And you might just use a glossary, use your telephone, smartphone, or dictionary, and just find a word. But if you're doing simultaneous interpretation, then what do? You need a strong emotional state so as to being able to kind of continue interpreting without focusing or anchoring all your mental processes into that error. Because if you do, that is going to affect the rest of the interpretation. It's not only one word or one expression or one phrase that you missed. You're going to miss three. And we say three for the price of one. Because as soon as you just put attention or just focus on one word or one phrase or one term, you're going to miss two or three, the next and the next one. Because it takes time, it takes mental capacity, it's a load of your mental capacity. It's going to tax your mental capacity. So you have to be fast, you have to be quick on your feet and just change, just move on, just continue to interpret. If you don't have the time, if you get the message and you don't have the term or word, and hopefully that won't happen to you, bad chances are it is going to happen either today or in 3 weeks' time or in 3 years' time. It is going to happen. So you have to be brave enough so as not to punish, not to leash yourself, but to admit that it happened. And you have a whole new message, whole new idea, whole new sentence or expression, or even set of group of expressions that you have to convey. And you have to continue, you have to move on. So you have to forgive yourself. You have to do as if nothing happened, and you have to continue interpreting. And that is not easy. That is not the best, probably, advice to give you the best thing to do, because you might just get too comfortable and you might just lose in just one speech 3, 4, 5 words, 3, 4, 5 phrases or expressions or sentences. That is not okay. I'm not saying that it is okay just to miss information and just continue, just move on as happily as you were. No, you are supposed to just write it down or try to memorize it somehow. And as soon as you just stop interpreting, your 20 or 30 minutes are over, your colleague is on, and then you're resting, Write that down, research that. Next time you're on, you are not going to miss it. Next time you're on, you cannot afford to miss that because you're just kind of preventing people from just getting that message that was so, that expression that was so important to the whole message that somebody was trying to transmit. And because of your inability or incapability, you were not able to. So you have to be alert. You have to be prepared. But you have to forgive yourself because eventually you're going to make a mistake. Eventually you're not going to know all the words. You're going to miss one word, one term, and you have to continue. You cannot just burn out just because you missed one word, one phrase, or one word. So you have to continue to do what you do, but you have to research it as soon as you have a chance, or you have to write it down for your colleague to look for it, and your colleague is going to research it, is going to give it to you, and the conference is going to continue, the speech is going to continue, and the people, the attendees, are going to continue to understand thanks to the fact that you're there with your team member, with your capacity, with your research abilities.
Wow, I really like the examples that you gave. I think they portray so well the complicated task of interpreting, and having it in a comparison between conference and public service or community interpreting serves really well to understand the difficulties of each field. But from what you said, from the examples you gave, would you say that the community interpreting has a higher emotional impact than conference interpreting? Just because, for example, in conference interpreting, you do have access to the materials in advance. So you are preparing, you have a colleague who supports you. So what would be your perspective on the emotional impact in a compared manner between public service interpreting and conference interpreting?
See, back in the day, that was 2009, summer 2009. I was at the CETRA course in the University, Catholic University of Leuven in Belgium, and I really admire. Sorry, I really admired very much conference interpreters and conference interpreter trainers because I said, you guys are magicians. How do you turn a person who just speaks two languages into a person who's like a robot who can say everything they are saying with the same intonation, with the same impact, with the same meaning? How is that possible? And then I remember Frank Spohacker, I just approached him and I said, like, no, I think you guys have to teach us. We need to learn from you how you do that. And then Franz was so nice and kind, and he came and approached and said, no, actually, we conference interpreters need to learn a lot from you because we do know the language, we do know the expressions at a very high level. We just interpret communications like politicals, or we interpret politicians, we interpret like state leaders and presidents and prime ministers, and we diplomats, and we interpret all sorts of high-end or high-profile people bad. You guys have to teach us the way you interact with people, with regular people on normal, regular basis, on normal, regular issues. And until that moment, I thought of conference interpreters, they were up here, that they really had those sets of skills that we were never going to be able to reach. But then Franz opened my eyes with this statement. And I said, well, yeah, that is true that when a doctor is kind of mad at a patient, the doctor runs and just speaks for 2 minutes in a very irate mode, and with a few or bunch of just strong words that I have to interpret, or a patient who's kind of seeing his family member who's not getting any well, he's just accusing the doctor of doing a disservice to his family member on purpose so that his family member loses his limb or his organ or his life. Then that is a challenge that conference interpreters do not face that often. And we face that 10 times a day, maybe 20 times a day, maybe once a week, but we do face it more often than they do in conference interpreting. So yes, it is much more difficult, as I said before, because you're dealing with people when they are most vulnerable, in their most vulnerable moments. It's when they lose their health, and when they lose their freedom, when they are about to lose health or freedom. In those moments, you can do everything. You can swear, or people will swear. People will just spit on your face. People will just vomit right in front of you. People are going to be doing all sorts of negative and horrific things. And you have to just deal with that. And you have to deal with that on the spot. Were you ready for that? Did you know that was going to happen right before you entered the session? No, you were not. Maybe after you've been in the business for, say, 3, 4, 5 years, you have dealt with more than one situation, then you know that anything can happen. Will somebody just give you a little child and put the child on your hands, meanwhile they're just trying to stop the blood coming out of somebody's eyes or nose, and you got a child in your hands? You're not supposed to, but you all of a sudden you have a child in your hands. What are you going to do? Are you going to drop the child? Are you going to tell him, no, 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 I cannot, I'm not supposed to? And the code of ethics is there just to save you and save the profession. We're not supposed to. But then what do you do when that happens? The mother just saw the toddler bleeding through their nose and just has a child on her arms, and she just turns around and just gives it to you. What are you going to do? Are you going to say no? Are you going to drop the child? And I repeat it on purpose, because that's when you say, I am not ready for this. I should have trained for this. But how do you train for that? Should I just teach you as part of a master's course or as a part of a career course? Should I teach you undergrad? Should I teach you that that could happen? Should I teach you what you're going to do? Yes, of course, we drill a lot. I remember when we were teaching the master's course at the University of Alcalá, we were drilling a lot of time and plenty of time with the code of ethics and standards of practice for hours. I remember that, and I enjoyed it a lot, because things come to your mind that you would not even imagine that could happen, but yes, they will happen, and worse. And you will just get out of, on a very snowy day, you're going to get out of your session having a knee rehab for a patient for 45 minutes. The patient's got a knee like this. When you walk out of the clinic, the patient is on sandals and it's snowing, and the patient has a knee like this, very swollen. And you're driving a beautiful Mercedes Benz, and you're going to just pass by that patient and not give that patient a ride. The patient is walking in sandals and it's snowing. Are you going to give the patient a ride? And that is, you're not supposed to. There's a code of ethics that prevents you from doing it. What are you going to do? And that's either you deal with yourself, or you deal with emotions, or you deal with the fact that you give the person a ride. So what you're going to do? And that is a challenge that most conference interpreters do not have to face on a daily basis.
Yeah, and that's very important to transfer this to the students. That's one of the things I really liked about the approach you had in the master's degree, and bringing real, maybe building role plays based on real scenarios, and the way we transfer the knowledge to new talents from the industry and from our experience.
Exactly. And if you're lucky, you're going to go through all these moments, and you're going to be able just to handle every moment, or handle yourself, or just perform or act and the most effective way, effective for you as a person, for you as a professional, for the other person that is just acting in this scenario or situation, for your profession, and for that person's life. Because in the end, it's not that you're a robot. It's not that you are just a person come from another planet. You're just a human being.
Exactly.
Who will probably be in a similar situation at any time in your life. So the first thing sounded easy, just how you act, how you perform. And it's the worst part, or the best part, is that you're going to be living with yourself for the rest of your life. So you're going to forgive yourself for doing or not doing something to help or protect or support that person. Will you be able to handle that in the long term? How long are you going to be able to handle that? I was just participating in Very interesting conference right yesterday. And it is an attorney who's a therapist, a psychologist. And she was telling that we've been researching medicine for about 4,000 years, since before Aristotle's, we knew about physiological issues and research about that. Somehow, doctors were able to cure people. We've been researching mental health for about the past 100 years, but we've been dealing with behavioral health only for about the past 50 years. And
Wow.
it's behavior we're talking about. It's behavior, and that is not that relevant for conference interpreters, not on a daily basis, because they're isolated most of the time in a booth. Even if you're interacting with people and you're speaking, you're just passing the message, just rendering the messages back and forth from one language into the other. Probably you're lucky enough and you're only doing it just from your B to A language or your A to B, whatever. But it happens a lot to public service, mainly educational interpreters. That's know the whole world, a world where I haven't had that much experience. That medical interpreters and legal interpreters, they have a challenge there. So they have to learn, they have to practice, they have to be constantly learning, because it is behavior you're dealing with. And how will people behave when they are just in difficult situations? You never know. You have to expect the worst. And you have to perform at your best when they are performing or acting at their worst. So
Wow.
how are you going to do that? And you have to get out of that session, just reset your mind and just get into another session and just be as neutral as you've ever been, as kind of happy and emotionally stable as you've ever been, so that your cognitive processes, namely reaction time, which is one of the ones that we need the most, we interpreters need the most. It's how you will react and how far or how fast you will react as they need. Because if they're talking fast, you need to adapt to talking fast. If they're just being paused, say mental health interviews or just sessions, you just have to be calm. The doctor is using a specific kind of words and kind of attitude, say like pragmatic communication. You have to follow the doctor's lead. If the judge is being rude, not that the judges are rude, but if the judge is being kind of using a strong way to communicate with a defendant, you have to kind of send that message and just get that message across. You cannot just say like in a monotone way, "Oh, imagine you cannot continue to be doing this," because the judge is kind of mad because of your actions, and the judge is trying to send you a message like, "This is the last time. I'm going to be warning you. Next time you're going to go to jail." So you have to pass that message along. You cannot be soft when they are being kind of strong. You have to be as strong. You have to pass the meaning, the content, the intention of the message. And if they're crying, how are you going to be acting? So you put this crying now with the previous kind of rough situation, or the previous 2 weeks in rough situations that you've been through. So when you add it all up, it's going to toll your mental capacity, it's going to toll your emotional feelings, and then your emotional or feelings are going to be affecting your cognitive capacities to interpret. So this is a rough, yes, it is a rough profession. But if you are able to train yourself, if you're able to attend training to develop the skill set, you're the one. I mean, people are waiting for you. You have to come on board, because there are not too many of us. Many people can speak 2, 3, 4, 5 languages, many of them. Millions of people can. But are you one of those who's able to come and just help people communicate? Remember, there's always somebody who will need your help. If you are able, if you consider strong enough to forgive yourself for errors on a daily basis, on an hour basis, because you will make errors. That's okay. But you will learn from your mistakes, and you will continue developing skills, and you will continue developing habits. And those are going to just build your competence. You're going to be very competent and you will be able to help lots of people to communicate.
Wow, I love that. I really like the way you express it and the keywords that you really use. And handling this emotional part linked to forgiving yourself, and you've highlighted it so many times. I think it's really one of the key concepts in dealing with emotions in such a demanding profession. So Dennis, I really love the way you portrait the difficulties, the emotional impact, and the real examples and scenarios from daily life of an interpreter, both in conference interpreting and in public service interpreting and in the courts. So I always like to end up the interview with main takeaways for our audience. And if you allow me, I just took some notes during the interview. And what I really liked from what you shared with us is, first of all, the commitment. You mentioned the word commitment, and it really resonated with me. So commitment to ourselves as professionals, but at the same time, commitment with the industry and with our colleagues. The second takeaway regarding the emotional impact would be not to punish yourself. We always do mistakes, we commit mistakes, but don't punish yourself. And the learning that I took from you in this situation is that not only to forgive ourselves as interpreters when we don't remember a specific word, is once the assignment is over, take that moment and reflect, learn from that moment, learn how to better manage a similar situation in the future. And forgive yourself and never stop learning, because being an interpreter is a profession where you never know what's the next assignment going to be about. So yeah, obviously, unless it's conference interpreting where you do have access to some information, but if you're in the public service interpreting or in the courts, you don't know in advance always what are you going to be facing there. And especially what you said, manage your emotions and try to do your best even in the worst scenarios. So I think that it's just very important what you mentioned here, and the lessons we can all learn from you and your professional experience. So just let me know if there's anything I missed, if there's anything you would like to highlight or add, because I think these are real advice for our audience.
Yes, thank you very much. Those are very relevant points for interpreters. And if I may add one more part that we didn't just refer much about, it's interpreting through telephone, like telephone interpreting. That is a fantastic opportunity. And it's a great opportunity to develop listening comprehension, to develop listening skills, and develop just your capacities as just to deal with people. Because when you are interpreting over the phone, if you're lucky enough and you're interpreting in-house, you get the information on the computer, you know where the phone call is coming from. But if you're just using a phone, just a phone set, and you don't get information through a computer, so you don't know where they are just calling you from. So you might be working for a company, you might be working for yourself as a freelance, and you might just be receiving phone calls from 911, from police officers on the street, from courtrooms, immigration courtrooms, from other kind of criminal or civil courtrooms, from workers' compensation offices or attorneys, or just courtrooms, in banks, medical insurance, car insurance. You might be receiving so many calls from so many different sectors. And that is going to train you to switch from one field or sector to another, to activate your vocabulary from one field to another in a flash. Like you just hang up with the doctor and all of a sudden you have a judge. You hang up with the judge and all of a sudden you have a banker. And you hang up with the banker and all of a sudden you have an accident on the street. You have a police officer, you have an insurance representative. And all of a sudden, you're just adapting your mindset to all different scenarios without seeing the people, without seeing the scene. And you have to picture in your brain, you have to view everything that you're just interpreting. You have to activate in a flash that vocabulary you're dealing with or you're going to be dealing with. And believe me, they're very different. I had the chance to interpret for customers and also for Walt Disney. And that is quite different when you're interpreting for somebody who's coming into a very posh resort, to a very posh theme park, or you're interpreting for a doctor and a nurse.
Yeah.
So that is a great opportunity if you have the chance to learn, to practice, to just get a job for one of those. That would be great to start because once you just go into any room, either if you're going to be doing conference interpreting or medical or court interpreting, that is going to help you a lot because once you're on site, once you can just see the people you're going to be interpreting for, interacting with, you're prepared after you've dealt with the phone calls.
Yeah, definitely. We haven't covered anything about over the phone interpreting. We could spend so much time to discuss all the other areas of interpreting, but I'm really glad that you mentioned it because indeed, over the phone interpreting is also a different perspective of interpreting, and it trains you. It allows you to develop another set of skills, right? To change very fast from one scenario to another, from legal to administrative to medical, just as you all mentioned. But yeah, I really appreciate that you mentioned this aspect as well. Yeah, so just to summarize, is there anything you would like to mention to the audience, the conclusion, or?
Yes, I always recommend, always suggest just training and learning and studying and researching. The more you study, the better you're going to feel, the best service and performance you're going to have and provide. So keep on learning. I just insist in emotional intelligence because if you're linguistically capable of just rendering a message, passing a message from one language to another, emotional intelligence is the only one thing that could just interrupt your life as a professional. No matter if you're going to be a trainer, an interpreter trainer, or you want to be a researcher once in your life, because you have a lot to provide to this field. You have a lot to just input into the field. So you're going to be dealing much better, doing much better if you just try to learn emotional intelligence. That is going to help you a lot. So any courses related to emotional intelligence, if you're in Madrid, you can just search for Escuela de Inteligencia. That's led by Javier Mañero. That is a brilliant place to start. If you just want to Google, just search Mario Alonso Puig, and he's a doctor talking about emotional intelligence and talking about just self-development and growth, self-growth. So just deal with that and just go and research. And more books. Well, I'm just going through Robin Setton's conference interpreting manuals right now. Those are fantastic. If you want to go in the field, you got to know those. And of course, all the people I mentioned before, Danielle Gill, Franz Pohak, Miriam Schlesinger, although she passed away a few years ago, she left a bunch of things written and research, relevant research on the field. If you are in Madrid, if you're in Spain, I still recommend the Masters at the University of Alcalá with Carmen Pena. These days, it used to be Carmen Valero. Carmen Valero is now with conference interpreting Masters. Those two are very relevant, very good. They're going to train you. There's a lot more that you're going to continue to learn once you get out of Masters. Those two are going to frame your mind in the field for you so that you can just advance further on by yourself. So the rest is just to thank you for this opportunity, Anka. I'm really honored to be chosen by you. I'm really honored to have met you early in your career. You have just provided as much feedback and learning opportunities for me as I have provided for you. So I just wish you a lot of success. I just cannot emphasize enough how much your project, new project, is going to help a lot of newcomers into the field of interpreting, so and translation as well. So thank you very much for this project. Thank you very much for being here for us. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Dennis. I really also appreciate the time that you took to share with us. And I also want to personally, once again, thank you for being my mentor during my PhD and even after. Always, you're there whenever I need guidance, say, what do I do now? You're the person to whom I reach out to. And that's why I really consider it's important to create this project to allow a broader audience to get access to your experience and the same experience of other guests. But I really think that whenever we share, we grow faster, and having a supportive community and persons to whom you can reach out to is definitely relevant for each one of us. So thank you also once again for your time, for sharing everything with us. And we keep in touch because there's just so much we cannot cover in only one interview. So I'm sure that we are going to have additional sessions because
Yes, we will.
It's a very vibrant industry, and there's always something new to learn and to share. So thank you so much.
Yes, and if you want to add my email and on my Facebook for your audience to just find me through email or my WhatsApp or phone number, whatever kind of ways you want to communicate with me, I'll be happy to just provide as much as I can, as much as I'm able to, so as to support your career, as to support your just steps into this profession. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Denis. Yeah, definitely we'll let the audience know how they can contact you. And thank you for being so open for everyone. That's really amazing. Thank you, and we keep in touch. Take care.
Thank you, you too.
Bye-bye. I invite you to follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and all other major platforms. Subscribe, but also share it with persons who might find it useful.